My wife secretly married her boss and claimed I embezzled $250, $0 from our family business to cover her affair. Then I found out she was planning to contest the will over the $1.5 million estate, and everything's falling apart. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this down, but here I am. My wife was supposed to be the perfect partner, beautiful, smart, charming. We had a good life, or so I thought. We had a nice house, a business that was growing, and a future that seemed secure. But then things started to feel off. Small things at first. She'd be secretive about her phone, cancel plans last minute, get defensive if I asked too many questions. I brushed it off, thinking she was just stressed or busy with work. Little did I know, the biggest betrayal was waiting right around the corner. One night I came home earlier than usual. I had been out all day trying to close a deal, and I was exhausted. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed her car wasn't in the garage, which wasn't strange. She sometimes met up with her friends. But then I saw her phone lying on the kitchen table face down. I figured I'd check it out just to see if there was anything I should worry about. Honestly, I didn't expect much, just a glance, maybe some harmless messages. But what I found chilled me to the bone. There were texts, emails, and pictures, all of her with her boss, Mark. They weren't just friendly exchanges. It was obvious they were having an affair. There were photos of them in bed together, her in lingerie, smirking at the camera like she was proud of what they were doing. The messages were even worse, talking about how much she loved him, how she couldn't wait to leave me, how she was planning to divorce me and contest the will over the estate. It was like a punch to the gut, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind went blank. I felt sick. All those years I thought I knew her, but she'd been lying right to my face. I could feel my fists clenching and my heart pounding so loud I thought I'd pass out. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours staring at those messages, trying to process what I just discovered. How long had this been going on? Did she ever love me? Was I just a paycheck to her? The worst part was knowing she planned to keep this secret and then take everything I worked for: our house, our savings, the family business. She was planning to cut me out entirely. The next morning, I confronted her. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I woke her up, showed her the messages, and demanded she explain herself. She looked me straight in the eye, her face full of contempt, and lied through her teeth. Said it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just a friend, that I was paranoid. She even had the nerve to call me crazy for snooping. But I wasn't stupid. I saw the truth in her eyes. She knew I saw everything. The way she sneered, like she was already planning her next move, made my blood boil. I felt a mixture of shock, anger, and heartbreak. How could she do this to me? After everything we built, she was screwing her boss, planning to leave me, and still had the nerve to deny it all. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, and morally. I'd given her my trust, my love, my life. And she threw it all away for some affair with a guy who probably was just using her for sex and status. I couldn't believe I was even saying this, but I felt like I was losing my mind. My stomach was in knots, and all I wanted was to disappear, to forget this nightmare. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her walk away with everything, especially after I found out she was planning to contest the will over the estate. I had worked too hard to let her take it all, so I started to plan. I needed to be smart, to protect what was mine, but also to make her pay for what she did. I didn't want her to think she could cheat and get away with it. This wasn't just about the money. This was about respect, dignity, and making sure she understood she couldn't manipulate me or my life anymore. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and trying to stay calm. Inside, I was burning with rage, but I knew I had to play it cool. I couldn't let her see how much she'd broken me, but make no mistake, I was already planning how to make her regret this. She thought she could cheat and walk away, but I was going to turn the tables on her. I wasn't just going to divorce her. I was going to make her pay for every lie, every betrayal, and every moment she made me believe we had something real. After I confronted that morning, everything changed. She was still acting like she hadn't done anything wrong, which only made my blood boil more. She threw around words like paranoia, crazy, and overreacting, trying to dismiss what I'd found as some kind of misunderstanding. But I knew better. I saw her sneer, the way she refused to look me in the eye, and I realized she was already thinking about her next move. She thought she could just deny everything and I'd back down. That's when I knew I had to get serious. I didn't want to blow everything up right then and there. Instead, I played it cool, pretending to be calm while secretly gathering evidence. I installed a few hidden cameras around the house, especially in the bedroom and her office space. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, so I had to be smart. I also reached out to a private investigator. I paid him to follow her to see where she went, who she met, and what she was up to. I needed to know if she was planning to leave or if she was just trying to buy time. In the meantime, I started to dig into our finances. It was clear was planning something. She mentioned contesting the will, which was worth $1.5 million. I'd worked hard for that estate, building our family business from the ground up. It wasn't just money to me, it was our future. I found out she'd already been talking to lawyers, trying to get her name on the estate documents. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just cheating. She was planning a full-blown legal attack to take everything I owned. I couldn't let her do that. I had to act fast. I met with my own lawyer who told me she had no legal claim to the estate unless she could prove I'd embezzled money or committed fraud. That's when I remembered the emails and messages I'd seen, the ones where she accused me of embezzling $250, $0 from the business. She'd been planting seeds to justify her eventual claim. I knew I had to find a way to turn this around, to show her she wouldn't get away with it. Meanwhile, behavior was getting more and more erratic. She was acting bitchy, snapping at me over nothing, trying to gaslight me into doubting myself. She even threw a tantrum when I questioned her about her whereabouts late at night. She'd say she was working late, but the truth was she was with Mark, her boss, her lover, the man she'd secretly married. I found out about the wedding through a mutual friend who saw a post on social media. Had gone behind my back and tied the knot with Mark, claiming I was an unfaithful, embezzling husband to justify her move. That was the final straw. The wedding was a slap in the face, a clear sign she was doubling down on her betrayal. I felt sick every time I thought about how she'd lied, cheated, and now was trying to take everything I'd built. I decided I couldn't let her keep doing this. I needed to act and fast. One night I confronted her again. I told her I knew she married Mark secretly, that I had proof. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she told me I was just jealous, that Mark was better than me, more successful, more handsome. She called me a loser, said I'd never amount to anything without her. That's when I realized she was trying to push me into a corner, to make me look like the bad guy so she could manipulate the situation. But I wasn't going down that easy. I played her game for a while, pretending to be hurt and confused. Inside, I was plotting how to expose her fully. I knew I had to gather the last pieces of evidence: her secret wedding documents, proof of her planning to contest the will, and the financial trail showing her embezzlement accusations. I also started to think about how I could leverage her affair against her legally. I contacted a divorce lawyer who specialized in high-stakes cases. We discussed how to protect my assets, how to prevent her from claiming anything she wasn't entitled to. I also looked into how to use her affair and marriage to Mark as leverage. If she was planning to contest the estate, I could argue she was acting in bad faith, especially since she'd been unfaithful for months. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to come out on top. In the midst of all this chaos, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of heartbreak and fury. I loved, or at least I thought I did, but her actions proved she didn't love me anymore. She was just using me, using our marriage, our family, and everything we built for her own selfish reasons. The money, the status, the thrill of the affair, she wanted it all, and she was willing to burn everything down to get it. I also started to think about how I'd been blind for so long, how I'd ignored the signs, dismissed her bitchy attitude as stress, and let her manipulate me with her lies. I felt stupid, humiliated, and furious. But at the same time, I realized I had to be smart. I had to protect what was mine and make sure she paid for her betrayal. I wasn't just going to divorce her, I was going to make her regret ever crossing me. The game was on, and I was ready to fight dirty if I had to. By the time I had all my ducks in a row, I realized I needed to be even more careful. Mood swings were getting worse, and I suspected she was starting to sense I was onto her. She'd throw fits over the smallest things, accuse me of spying, and act like the victim whenever I brought up her secrecy. Honestly, I didn't care what she thought anymore. My focus was on protecting myself, the estate, and making her regret ever messing with me. One evening, I found her on the phone in the bedroom, whispering. I didn't want to push her, but I knew she was talking to Mark. I managed to sneak a peek at her screen when she wasn't paying attention. Sure enough, there were texts about their secret wedding, plans to move to a new city, and how she was going to contest the will. The pieces clicked into place. She'd been orchestrating her escape for months, planning to leave me, take the money, and start fresh with her new husband. All the while, she told me she was working late or busy with the business. I felt a surge of anger. How could she be so manipulative? How could she lie to my face and pretend everything was fine? I knew I had to act fast. This wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about stopping her from destroying everything I'd built. I reached out to my lawyer again. We drafted a legal strategy to freeze her assets, prevent her from contesting the will, and get a court order to investigate her claims of embezzlement. I wanted her to know I was serious. Meanwhile, I also hired a private investigator to follow her more closely. The PI confirmed what I already suspected. She was meeting Mark regularly, even staying overnight at hotels and making secret trips out of town. It was all happening so fast. I was caught between heartbreak and rage. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a liar, a cheat, and a thief. She was trying to steal my life, my money, and my future. One night I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I set up a confrontation. I told her I knew about her marriage to Mark, about her plans to contest the estate, and her betrayal. I wanted her to see how much I'd uncovered. Her reaction was priceless. She froze for a second, then started to spin her usual lies. She claimed I was paranoid, that Mark was just a friend, and that I was making everything up to control her. But I had evidence, screenshots, emails, witness statements. I laid it all out, and her face turned pale. That's when she snapped. She started yelling, calling me a jealous, insecure loser who couldn't keep his wife happy. She said I'd driven her to her breaking point, and that she was entitled to what she wanted because I was a bad husband. She even accused me of embezzling money myself, trying to turn the tables. I just shook my head. I knew her game. She was trying to make me doubt myself, to make me look like the bad guy, but I wasn't falling for it. I decided I had to get her out of the house. I told her she needed to leave, that I was going to file for divorce, and that everything she'd done would come out in court. She screamed, called me names, and said she'd ruined me, but I didn't care anymore. I was done being played. I packed her bags, called the police to escort her out, and made sure she left with nothing but her purse. I wanted her to see that I was serious. She wasn't going to take my money, my estate, or my dignity without a fight. Once she was gone, I felt an odd mix of relief and emptiness. Part of me felt victorious, knowing I'd stopped her from getting away with everything, but another part felt broken, like I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. I spent the next few days cleaning up the mess, reviewing all the evidence, and preparing for the legal battle ahead. I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Was determined to fight, and I was ready for whatever came next. I also started to reflect on everything I'd learned. Trust is fragile. People can lie so convincingly you start to doubt your own instincts. But in the end, it's about protecting yourself, your money, your reputation, your sanity. I realized I'd been blind for too long, but now I saw clearly. Betrayal wasn't just about cheating. It was about greed, manipulation, and a complete lack of respect. I won't say I've forgiven her, but I've learned to be more cautious, more guarded. And I know now that if someone's actions don't match their words, you don't ignore it. You confront it. Because if you don't, they'll take everything from you, your trust, your happiness, your life. After finally left, I thought the worst was over. I had her out of the house, the evidence was piling up, and my lawyer was working behind the scenes to secure my assets. But I quickly learned that her plans went deeper than I initially thought. I started receiving anonymous calls, threatening messages, and even some strange visits from guys claiming to be her friends or her new supporters. I knew she was trying to fight dirty, to drag me down as much as she could. The first time I got a call, it was late at night. A muffled voice told me I'd regret crossing her, that she had people ready to destroy me if I didn't back off. I didn't answer, but I kept the number. Turns out had been making shady deals, hearing shady lawyers trying to buy off witnesses, even attempting to bribe some of her friends to lie on her behalf. It was clear her desperation was mounting, and she was willing to do anything to win. Meanwhile, I dug into her financials more thoroughly. I found out she'd been draining our joint account, selling off jewelry, withdrawing cash, and funneling money into secret accounts. I also discovered that she'd been funneling hush money to some of her friends, trying to discredit me in court. I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, but I refused to be the one who got destroyed. I decided I needed to get ahead of her. I filed for a restraining order citing harassment and threats. The court granted it quickly, which limited her contact with me and our lawyers. That was a relief, but I knew she wouldn't give up that easily. She was cornered, and her rage was turning into pure desperation. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. He told me had hired a private investigator of her own, trying to dig up dirt on me, anything she could use, to discredit me and claim I'd embezzled money or committed some kind of fraud. I laughed bitterly. She was truly willing to do anything. I knew I needed to be even more careful. If she was trying to turn the court against me, I had to be spotless. That's when I started to document everything, every transaction, every email, every phone call. I compiled a detailed timeline of her activities, her secret meetings, her attempts to manipulate others, and her lies. I also made sure my own financial records were clean and transparent. I didn't want her to have any ammo to use against me. The court hearing started rolling in, tried to argue that I was an unfit husband, that I'd embezzled money, that I was abusive. None of it stuck. Her lies were too blatant, and my evidence was airtight. I had witnesses who confirmed her affair, her marriage to Mark, and her attempts to contest the estate. The judge saw through her and dismissed her claims. It was a victory, but I knew the fight wasn't over yet. Throughout this chaos, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loss. I'd loved once, believed in us, believed she loved me. Now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulator, a liar, and a user. The betrayal cut deep. I'd poured my heart into that marriage, into our business, into our future. And she had thrown it all away for some affair, some greed, some desperate attempt to get what she thought she deserved. But I also realized I was stronger than I thought. I'd faced her lies, her schemes, her threats, and I was still standing. I refused to be the victim here. I was going to fight for everything I had left. I'd rebuild my life, this time with my eyes wide open. No more illusions, no more trust blindly given. If someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. That's what I'd learned. And I was determined not to let her take me down, not without a fight. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles, financial scrutiny, and emotional exhaustion. I threw myself into protecting what was mine, my estate, my reputation, and my sanity. On the other hand, didn't give up. She kept trying to find new ways to undermine me, to turn people against me, or to squeeze every last dollar she could. I knew she was desperate, and desperation makes people do crazy things. One day, I received a call from my lawyer, had filed a new motion, claiming I had physically threatened her during one of our heated exchanges. To be honest, I was stunned. I never laid a finger on her, but she was good at spinning stories. I knew this was her last-ditch effort to sway the court, to paint me as the villain. I prepared my defense, gathering witness statements and collecting every piece of evidence that proved her lies. I also hired a private investigator to dig into her recent activities. Turns out, she had been meeting with some shady contacts, trying to buy more legal favors, and even attempting to bribe a court clerk to sway the judge's opinion. Her tactics became more aggressive, and I had to stay one step ahead. I started attending therapy sessions, not because I needed help, but because I knew I had to keep my head clear. The betrayal had left scars, but I refused to let her win by breaking me down emotionally. I also began to rebuild myself, focusing on my work, my health, and my future. I realized that I'd been so caught up in the chaos that I hadn't taken the time to truly grieve or process what had happened. Meanwhile, attempts at manipulation grew more pathetic. She'd send me passive-aggressive texts, try to guilt-trip me into giving her a settlement, and even attempt to make me feel guilty for breaking up our family. But I wasn't falling for it. I knew her game. I had learned to see her lies for what they were, desperate attempts to cling to a life she no longer deserved. One day, I received a letter from her lawyer. She was demanding a huge sum of money to drop her claims and settle quietly. I read it and just shook my head. I had already spent thousands on legal fees trying to defend myself from her schemes, and I knew I couldn't just buy her off. I'd learned that her greed was insatiable. She wanted everything, my money, my house, my reputation, and she was willing to destroy me to get it. I decided I had enough. I filed a countersuit accusing her of fraud, malicious prosecution, and emotional abuse. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, not just financially but emotionally. I wanted the court to see her for what she was, a manipulative, unfaithful woman who'd betrayed her vows, her family, and her integrity. The final hearings were intense. Tried everything, but her lies kept falling apart under cross-examination. Witnesses confirmed her affair, her marriage to Mark, and her attempts to sabotage me. I could see her frustration, her desperation. And in that courtroom, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had fought for myself, for my reputation, and for my future. When the judge finally made the ruling, it was clear. Claims were dismissed, and I was awarded full custody of the estate. She was ordered to pay damages for her malicious actions, and her attempts to contest the will were invalidated. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was a personal one. I had taken everything she threw at me and turned it around. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this ordeal. I learned that trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, but resilience is stronger. I learned to be cautious and to protect myself, not just financially but emotionally. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes you have to fight to reclaim your life, even when it feels like everything's falling apart. Now I'm rebuilding. I've started a new chapter focusing on myself and my future. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to know, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Because if you don't, you might just lose everything: your money, your happiness, and your peace of mind. In the end, I realized that the most painful part of all this wasn't just the betrayal. It was the sense of losing the woman I once thought I knew, the future I'd envisioned, and the trust I'd given so freely. But what hurt even more was how close I came to losing myself in the process. I had to claw my way out of that darkness, piece by painful piece. It wasn't easy, and I won't pretend I've fully healed. Some scars run deep, and some nights still feel like I'm reliving that nightmare. What I've come to understand is that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places: someone you love, someone you trust. And when it does, it's tempting to shut down, to become bitter, or to think everyone's the same. But I've learned that resilience isn't about denying the pain, it's about facing it head-on and choosing to move forward anyway. I've learned that money, status, and possessions mean nothing if your heart and integrity are compromised. The real victory is reclaiming yourself, your dignity, your boundaries, and your peace of mind. Looking back, I see the lessons clearly now. Trust should be earned, not given blindly. People can hide their true selves behind a smile, behind lies, behind a of success. And sometimes, the only way to protect yourself is to see through the masks they wear. I've become more cautious, more aware, and more determined to guard my life from those who might want to take advantage of me. This experience has also shown me the importance of standing up for yourself, no matter how intimidating the opponent. Thought she could manipulate, deceive, and walk away with everything. But I refused to let her. I fought not just for my money or my estate, but for my dignity and my future. That fight, brutal as it was, has made me stronger. I've learned that sometimes the only way to win is to stand your ground and refuse to be a victim. So if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: be vigilant, trust your instincts. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Don't dismiss the red flags or brush aside your gut feelings. Because if you do, you might find yourself losing everything: your love, your money, your peace. But if you stay vigilant, protect yourself, and fight for what's right, you can come out of it stronger. You can rebuild what's broken and find a new path forward, one built on honesty, resilience, and self-respect. And for myself, I know that life will never be perfect, but it will be mine again. I'll keep moving forward no matter what's thrown my way, because I've learned that no matter how dark the night, there's always a dawn, and I refuse to let betrayal define my story. I will write my own ending, one of strength, dignity, and hope.